The 15th of April marks 2 years since fighting officially broke out in Sudan between the army and the Rapid Support Forces, two wings of the same coup regime that seized power back in October 2021. Pitting General Abdel Fattah al-Burhan, head of the Sudanese Armed Forces, or SAF, against his deputy, RSF Chief Mohammed Hamdan Hemeti Daglo, the conflict, comprising armed violence, identity-based atrocities, and man-made famine, has evolved into what the International Rescue Committee calls the largest humanitarian crisis on record, leaving 30.4 million people, or over half the population, in urgent need of assistance, a 23% increase on last year alone. Coinciding with this biennial milestone, the UK, in collaboration with Germany, France, and the EU, is co-hosting a ministerial conference to discuss sustainable pathways for ending the war, safeguarding civilians, and improving the delivery of aid. This dialogue takes place at an important time, as superficially the war appears to have come full circle. Following swift advances by the RSF in 2023 and early 24, encompassing much of the capital, almost all of Darfur, and swathes of the southeast, the SAF counteroffensive, starting in late September, has continued to make headway, pushing on multiple fronts and recapturing major cities like Wad Madani and Sinjar. With the military seizing the presidential palace and much of downtown Khartoum by mid-March, commentators are already referencing a turning point that may reshape opportunities for a political settlement, a process both sides have previously refused to really entertain. Crucially, however, any expectations of a quick resolution, further rapid strategic shifts, or a conclusive military victory should be tempered. Although the army has undoubtedly benefited from a massive recruitment drive and infusion of foreign tech, including Iranian-manufactured drones, RSF strategic failings, from infighting to overreach and supply shortages, have arguably created at least some of the space for SAF's tactical successes. These same conditions are not necessarily available across Hemeti's heartlands in Darfur, a region Sudan's generals have historically struggled to control. Making further inroads could therefore become exponentially more difficult, while the RSF has launched new attacks in northern states and broadened its wartime coalition to include other rebel outfits, like the SPLM North, based along Sudan's southern border. Secondly, SAF increasingly resembles a hodgepodge of community militiamen, Islamist brigades, former insurgent groups, and provincial paramilitaries that are arguably collaborating more out of fear of the RSF than support for al-Burhan or his lieutenants. This has led to a diffusion of authority among different conflict actors, reducing the army to one voice among many, and further diminishing its ability to define clear aims, agree concessions, and identify a workable post-war dispensation. With the recapture of Khartoum, these disputes may start boiling over. This also speaks to a wider pattern of diffusion and proliferation, with warring parties fragmenting and multiplying over time. Violence is increasingly decentralized across the country, seeming an independent momentum outside the struggle between SAF and the RSF. As a result, any bargaining between political big men like Hemeti and al-Burhan may well have little bearing on the myriad of private conflicts that now shape local insecurity. Additionally, external sponsors and spoilers continue to support the belligerents financially, diplomatically, and, in some cases, materially. Although most have accepted invitations to the London conference, there is no indication their incentives have changed in any meaningful way, with competition between Gulf states, among others, raising the risk of an all-out proxy war and Sudan's potential partition. The influx of foreign weaponry, munitions, and equipment, in turn, also poses huge challenges to regional stability, with the possibility of spillover into Chad, Ethiopia, and South Sudan, all of which have their own escalating problems. Against this backdrop, the UK-based ministerial dialogue faces significant difficulties. Maintaining attention on the crisis, ramping up pressure on the warring parties, and improving coordination between outside donors are all valuable outcomes in themselves, especially given the collapse of USAID. But it's imperative that discussion avoids repeating the same mistakes that have so often characterized past negotiations on Sudan, from undervaluing civic agency to issuing empty platitudes or recycling outdated or unimplemented agreements. Ceasefires are not a synonym for peacemaking and may do little to allay the underlying drivers of conflict or prevent further atrocities. It is a laudable and much needed goal, but not an end in itself, nor a necessary precondition for protecting civilians. At the same time, long-running questions over economic justice, representation, and power remain critical, as does the role of foreign benefactors and the structural grievances and inequalities that continue to characterize Sudanese governments. Discussions in London offer a platform for facilitating effective multilateral engagement on a much neglected crisis, But the stakes are high and time is short.